have arrived at a moment of decision. Our home, Earth, is in danger. What is at risk of being destroyed is not the planet itself, of course, but the conditions that have made it hospitable for human beings. Our dangerous over-reliance on carbon-based fuels is at the core of all three of these challenges: the economic, environmental, and national security crises. We're borrowing money from China.
We're listening to the biggest liar of the century, one of the greatest con men in history, none other than former Vice President Al Gore, who has made a fortune peddling fear and apocalyptic prophecies. And we have on the show the former science advisor to Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who astonishingly was banned from Congress today by the Stalinist Democrat Party under Obama. He flew in from London. He was supposed to testify and refute Gore today at a hearing on so-called global warming. On arrival at the airport from England yesterday afternoon, the House Democrats said they don't want Gore humiliated, and so they slammed the door of the Capitol in his face. Is this the America that you want to live in? Do you want to live in a world where you can't hear both sides of a discussion? Well, I warn you, under Obama, that is exactly what's happening. In the first hour, we began our discussions with Lord Christopher Monckton. We're going to continue them in a moment. But I want to reiterate that we're also talking about this astonishing emergence of a new human swine avian flu strain from Mexico, with our incompetent bureaucrats in the CDC saying, oh no, travel is fine, immigration is fine, just wash your hands. The same thing these idiots did with the AIDS epidemic. They told you to use condoms, not to control your impulses. And we're going to get now to the lying in the environmental world. Back with Lord Christopher Monckton, and I suggest you take notes. Lord Monckton, welcome back to the Savage Nation.
Well, it's grand to be back, Michael. I mean, the point here is that CO2 is absolutely essential to all plant life.
I know we should generate a little more carbon dioxide. But, let's talk about facts. I'm also an avid boater, and I've looked at tide charts going back a very long period of time here in San Francisco Bay. I have not seen a millimeter of change in the sea level. Is there any evidence of a rising sea level along the lines of Al Gore's catastrophic theories that New York City will soon be underwater?
No, all of that is rubbish. He said it again today. He said, look, it's going to rise 20 feet. But that's when the judge brought him up short and said, no, the Armageddon scenario that he depicts is not based on any scientific view. Sea level, as best we can make it out, and I got this from the world's greatest expert on this, Professor Nicholas Murner, who's been researching this for 35 years. He does nothing but sea level. He's written 520 scientific papers on the subject. And he says that in the last century, the 20th century, sea level rose by, get this, not 8 feet, not 4 feet, not 2 feet, not 1 foot, but 8 inches, maybe. Not even as much as that, probably.
Wait, 8 inches over the last 100 years?
Yep, over 100 years. It went up by just 8 inches, not 8 inches a year.
Well, wait a minute. So Gore may have something here. If we live 1,000 more years, all of us, we may see a rise of 2 feet.
The very worst that could happen, according to the UN's climate panel, and these people are basically bedwetters trying to justify their own existence, so they'll kind of sex it up as best they can, but they can't make out a maximum of more than 2 feet in the whole of the 21st century. But what's actually happening is that sea level has stopped rising altogether. Al Gore didn't mention that today, and you won't have heard that in your newspaper or on your CNN or on your MSNBC. They will somehow not have bothered to tell you that in the last 3 years there has been no statistically significant rise in sea level at all. It has stopped.
Lord Monckton, let's talk about the politics of this, because you've raised a very important point, and it goes to the heart of this. You were banned by Stalinist Democrats from even speaking and presenting your facts, which is very worrisome. But why is it that extreme leftists embrace global warming while the entire conservative intelligentsia understands it as a big lie? Why has this broken down along political lines? And moreover, the second part of the question is, in the UK at least, where I think there's a chance for a little more open-mindedness, I could be mistaken, are there any liberal so-called or labor scientists who agree with you?
There are very few on the political left who are willing to say that they agree. There are many who, of course, know perfectly well that the science behind this is, to use a technical term, bollocks. Am I allowed to say that on the air? Well, too late. I've said it now.
Oh, yes. They don't know what it means here in America, so it's perfectly
I probably
safe.
get away with that one there.
No, the FCC is filled with so many dummies, they wouldn't even know where to look to find what the word means.
They can look it up under cojones then.
They can look it up. It's next to coprolites, I think.
Something like that. Anyway, it's basically rubbish, and most scientists know that it's rubbish. Very few scientists dare to say that it's rubbish because the left is ruthlessly in control of the academic world and the universities. And anyone who dares to say, just a moment, none of this adds up, it's all nonsense, they get penalized, they get moved to ever smaller offices with no daylight.
Oh, my God, it's right out of the ex-Soviet Union.
It's just like that. I can tell you of a colleague of mine who is working at one of your most eminent institutions. I won't name it, or him. It would be unkind to them both. But he has been moved successively in the last 5 years to ever smaller offices. They've been trying to get rid of him, but they can't because he is independently funded. And also because I've written to them and saying if they do remove him, I will go public and say who they are and who he is.
Unbelievable.
And this is happening all over America.
So the evidence against global warming is, one, temperatures are actually decreasing, not increasing. The level of sea level rise has actually stopped completely. What is the other evidence, sir?
Slowly. Likewise, the amount of carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere is only half what these wretched Xbox 360s and PlayStations that these scientists use predicts it will be. You know, they have these so-called computer models on which the entire case for this climate alarm is built. And the computer models say there ought to be twice as much CO2 staying in the atmosphere as there is. But it's all being taken out. And you know, as a botanist, it's being taken out by trees and plants. It's being taken out to form the shells of ocean creatures. It's being taken out in huge quantities by what we call the biosphere and the hydrosphere. And that's why it isn't accumulating at the rate that the UN would like it to be accumulating so as to justify the continued existence of its climate panel as the new world government. But the fact is that CO2 is rising at far less, about half, the rate the UN predicts, and the UN admits that it can't explain why the CO2 isn't rising as fast as it wants it to rise. So,
you know, it's interesting. I had the president of Czechoslovakia on the show 2 years ago, totally on board with the realities of the situation. You're an eminent scientist. You know what's going on. Thousands of reputable scientists say that Al Gore is a liar, and yet the American newspapers and media continue to pump out the big lie. And of course, this is tied into the emerging New World Order, one world government, where they have us all in the grips of a panic and control us with the big lie. But here we have Obama now wanting to control our light bulbs and flushing of water, for God's sakes, under, the same guys that unless we control our use of energy, CO2 levels will rise and the world will come to an end. How do they get away with this?
They get away with it because the political class, which includes a lot of the media, you know, these are political animals whose first allegiance is to the international left and not to the truth. They will drift along with this because it's convenient or because they, too, would be threatened with the sack. I recently, for instance, tried to publish quite a detailed and quite learned and very well-referenced article, you know, with all the graphs and charts and scientific papers quoted and cited and listed and the page numbers and everything in the Journal of the Chartered Insurance Institute of London. And when the editors of the journal read the article, which they had asked me and an eminent member of the insurance industry to write jointly, they said they didn't want to publish it because they had signed up to a climate action partnership or some damn fool organization like this, which believed in the whole nonsense. And so I said, you've got two choices now. You either publish in full the article you commissioned, and which we have written, and which is of very good quality and sets out the science extremely
Where can we get this article, Lord Monckton?
It is now published, because I said that if they didn't do it, I would have the entire thing read into the record of the U.S. Senate and the House of Lords in the U.K. with a rider to the effect that the editors had tried to...
Okay, we have to go to a commercial break or I will be out of business. We're going to come back for one more segment. I thought this would be 3 minutes long. It started almost an hour ago, but it's very rare that we get someone as succinct and as literate and as passionate and as humorous, I may say, as Lord Christopher Monckton, the man who Obama banned from Congress today. I'll be right back.